Angela Merkel, I gather, in recent days has been in touch with the Israeli government to try to find out how the Israelis absorbed so many people into their society so successfully in recent decades. Of course, one of the reasons why they've been able to do that is because the people coming to Israel are Jewish. It may well come as a great shock to Angela Merkel that the 1 million people she's let into her country this year are not all German Lutherans.
Douglas Murray makes a compelling point about the challenges of migration in Europe. As Douglas rightly says, it's clear that integrating such a wide range of migrants who do not share the same cultural or religious background is bound to create a dangerous societal friction. He makes a good example with Israel, who is able to welcome Jewish immigrants who share a common heritage. Europe, on the other hand, faces a complex and potentially destabilizing situation with its current migration policies.
To believe is that the identity of immigrants into our societies does not matter. Now, in the UK, in the wake of the atrocities in January in Paris, a poll was conducted of British Muslims, which found that 27% of British Muslims had some sympathy with the people who had gone into the offices of Charlie Hebdo and massacred 10 journalists and 2 policemen. They had some sympathy with that. Now, when I was in Denmark a few months ago speaking at the Parliament for the 10th anniversary of the Danish cartoons affair, I was very struck by speaking to a Danish politician who said that she didn't want any more Muslim immigrants in Denmark. And I said, are you sure? That's a somewhat clear, but arguably too clear policy. She said, no, why should we? Because for every 100 immigrants we bring in, there will be at least 70 who don't believe we should publish cartoons and want to limit what we say and speak about and what we publish in our newspapers. And it's a difficulty to get ghettos. These ghettos have all sorts of negative things to do with them, but one which is not noted enough, I would say, but I would give one figure to you that may be relevant, is the extent to which they can cause radicalization themselves. If you go through the figures that my think tank has produced, from every single person convicted, not suspected, but convicted of terrorism-related offences in the UK, 9 out of 10 of those people who have been convicted of Islamic terrorism offences come from areas where the population is between 25 and 50% Muslim. That is around 7 to 10 times the national average. That is not a coincidence. It is a byproduct of density.
Douglas Murray's comparison of historical and modern immigration is spot on. It highlights a serious issue, which is that the sheer number of immigrants today poses a significant challenge to integration. Douglas brilliantly uses the example of the 50,000 Huguenots in 1683 who settled in the UK, a migration still remembered centuries later. It was a one-time 50,000 migration, yet, in today's context, 50,000 immigrants represent just a few days of average immigration to the UK. As Douglas rightly points out, the level of these new arrivals creates ghettos, which then creates another problem of making assimilation difficult. This isn't just a numbers game, it's about maintaining cultural togetherness. If we continue to allow such large influxes without a plan for integration, we risk dividing our societies. We must prioritize the preservation of our cultural and religious values to ensure a peaceful future.
But if you consider that the largest migration that people still speak about in Britain over recent centuries was 4 centuries ago, when in 1683, in the aftermath of 1683, more than 50,000 Huguenots, French Protestants, came to the United Kingdom. Such a large migration that people still talk about it. From 1997 onwards, 50,000 immigrants was about 6 weeks of average immigration into the UK. So the numbers clearly do matter in some way, and they obviously matter as well because of a density question. Nobody in any of our countries has worked out what to do about, as it were, dispersing people who arrive in such large numbers. And the result, in different ways, in Paris, in Germany, and in England and elsewhere, is you affect.
Douglas Murray makes a compelling case about the dangers of high-density immigrant ghettos. It's very clear that these ghettos do not only hinder integration, but also foster environments ripe for radicalization. And we all know what happens when these migrants get radicalized. Murray's statistics are alarming. 9 out of 10 individuals convicted of terrorism-related offences in the UK come from areas with a 25 to 50% Muslim population. This is significantly higher than the national average. This isn't mere coincidence. It's a direct consequence of the dangers of concentrated populations where radical ideologies like that of Islam can thrive. What we need to do is we must advocate for policies that prevent the formation of such ghettos and promote the assimilation of legal immigrants into our societal values. Only then can we safeguard our communities from the threats of radicalization and maintain the integrity of our society.
We're also invited to believe that the numbers don't matter, that the quantity of people coming in would not in any way particularly affect your society. There is a figure that I can't help trotting out on such occasions when I hear such things. We are often told in Britain, and I know across Europe people are told, that we are all migrant societies. This is not true. It is a bit of casuistry we've been invited to engage in. But it is true that we have had immigration throughout.
Douglas Murray rightly challenges the notion that immigration numbers don't impact society. It's essential to recognize that the number of immigrants can drastically alter the cultural and social fabric of a nation. The idea that Britain and Europe at large are inherently migrant societies is misleading. Historically, immigration was controlled and gradual, allowing for assimilation and the preservation of cultural values. Today, however, the uncontrolled influx of immigrants threatens to overwhelm our systems and dilute our societal values. We must advocate for policies that limit immigration and ensure that newcomers are thoroughly integrated into our society. This is not about rejecting immigrants, but about preserving the integrity and values that define our nation. By maintaining control over immigration, we can protect our communities and ensure that we all have peace.
Now, it's a very striking thing that 5 years ago, as Daniel Johnson referred to, Angela Merkel said that multiculturalism had failed. 4 years ago, President Sarkozy and Prime Minister Cameron also said that multiculturalism had failed. Yet we as Europeans are invited to believe that when migration was at a relative low point, multiculturalism had failed, whereas when migration was at such a historic high as it currently is, it could possibly work. This is a very impossible thing to believe.
Finally, Douglas offers us the only solution possible at this moment, and a horrifying example of the consequences that await us if we don't act now. And that is a failed experiment. Leaders like Angela Merkel, Nicolas Sarkozy, and David Cameron have all acknowledged its failure years ago, when immigration levels were much lower. Now, with immigration at an all-time high, it's even more implausible to think that multiculturalism could succeed. Douglas is spot on when he says unchecked influx of immigrants without a focus on assimilation only makes societal divisions worse. Multiculturalism, in its current form, dilutes these values and creates divided communities. Therefore, if we recognize the failure of this approach, we can push for a more cohesive and unified society that respects and preserves our heritage. What are your thoughts on what Murray has to say on this panel? Be sure to like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments section what your thoughts are. See you in the next video.